Hello, I'd like to talk to you today about the book of Isaiah. This is a really big book, and it has several topics that it covers, more than one anyway. And I'd like to begin talking to you about one of those topics. And in that beginning, I'd like to look at chapters 1 through 6. And I'd like to make some just general notations about each of these chapters. In chapter 1, if you read it, one very significant thing you'll find is chapter 1 verse 1. It is introduction, which defines a time frame for this vision of Isaiah. It goes something like the vision of Isaiah son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, the kings of Judah. And that turns out to be, Uzziah, if we're kind of at the end of his reign, we'll call it from 750, and Hezekiah, he died in 680 something, so we'll call it 680. So, we got a range from 750 to 680-ish covered here. What else can, in chapter 1, we see right away that there's a problem of sin and disobedience, and you'll see that same theme running through most of the first 5 chapters of the book of Isaiah. It's interesting to note that there is some reflection, looks like some reflection going on, like as if the writer, they didn't, all of chapter 1 wasn't written before any of the rest of the book. It was, they did some work and added in because, it's kind of, it says, oh, we're in the middle of this thing that, the rest of the book is going to be talking about. But anyway, generally, the problem, sin and disobedience. I'll read verse 4. Ah, sinful nation, the people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel to anger. They are gone way backward. That's kind of just the general gist of all of chapter 1. And it talks a little bit about how, what the plans are here. Zion shall be redeemed. This is chapter 1 verse 27. Zion shall be redeemed with judgment, or converts with righteousness. Chapter 2, it kind of continues the same thought. The interesting thing about chapter 2 is that the first several verses are identical to the first several verses of Micah chapter 4. Don't know what to make of that, but they are identical. I think it starts in verse 2 through verse 4 or something like that. And but you can kind of go and compare Micah chapter 4, a few verses, to Isaiah chapter 2, a few verses. But anyway, after that, which is a seemingly positive note, it goes back to this, problem of sin and disobedience. Their land is full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands. So on, problem, sin, and disobedience. Chapter 3, same thing. For Jerusalem is ruined and Judah is fallen. Now, this is kind of like, something has already happened, and, I don't think that this was all in order, so that this is kind of a redaction, you might call it. Woe to the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward is in his hands, and so on. Judgment and justice coming from sin and disobedience. Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is a bit different than the other chapters. It's kind of positive. It's a looking forward to something in a good way. So it's not necessarily out of order, but it doesn't necessarily talk about the problem of sin and disobedience. It looks forward to a better day. Chapter 5 is, it again continues this problem of sin and disobedience. And the anger of the Almighty is kindled against this people because of such. Now, chapter 6 is a significant change in setting. I've often said that if you don't understand chapter 6 of the book of Isaiah, then you don't understand the book of Isaiah. I think that Isaiah chapter 6 is the cornerstone of the whole writing. So I would encourage you to read it again, and just really almost memorize it and get a grasp of what it's saying. Because here it says, in the year that King Uzziah died, Isaiah had this vision, And in this vision, the Almighty comes and he tells Isaiah what his plans are for the people, and it's very, very harsh, you know. And it says that he doesn't want them to repent at a small rebuke, you know. Whenever he punishes them gently, or begins to punish them, he don't want them to say, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back. It sounds like that he's been through too many iterations like that where it didn't hold. And he said, I have a significant plan, I have a significant cleansing. And he said, the people will be taken away. They will be rent, and they'll be rent again after that. And what remains will be the holy seed, the set apart people. So his purpose here is that he is tired of having disobedient people in his land. And so I would encourage you, I'm going to keep this kind of short. So the first part of Isaiah is about the problem of sin and disobedience and how to deal with that problem of sin and disobedience. And don't miss chapter 6. Read it and read it again. Chapter 6 is a cornerstone for the writing. Chapter 6 talks about how it's going to happen. And I'll have a part 2, and it's going to take up chapter 7. You could just look into that, and hopefully at the end of this we'll get a better understanding of what the book of Isaiah is about.